I've lost my son 2 months ago. He was only 25, he was disabled, he had cerebral palsy since birth. My husband and I loved him so much and gave him all the love and care he needed to make through the difficult times. Since his death I have been getting a lot of advice on how to move on in life and pretend like my son didn't even exist. Just like what they did when my husband passed away 2 years ago. My brother-in-law, husband's brother, has always been a total idiot to me. 1 week before my husband died he told my husband to not worry about me cause I will marry again. He told this while he was dying. My husband was a great man, he was a donor, he cared for our son and always wanted for him to be happy. But my son died right after we got back from the funeral. My brother-in-law and his wife stayed at my house for a whole week. He said, "Why are you still so sad for your son? You should be happy for him, you should be happy for both of you, him not having to deal with his disability anymore and you being free, now you can go live your life without having to take care of a disabled person." It wasn't like he was gonna make it to 50, right? I felt just awful. I got so angry with him. I told him he was an idiot and told him to get out of my house. He started running his mouth again and said, "I know you're just acting out cause you're grieving, but that does not excuse your horrible behavior towards me and my wife." Before he left, I told him to hand me the spare key to my house that he stole from my husband before he died. He lifted it up then instead of giving to me, he tossed it in the trash bin. His wife was laughing on her way out and I just stood there feeling awful. I cried my eyes out that day and wished my son was there to comfort me. Now he's calling me to say that wants me to come over and help his wife decorate his son's birthday party. No one gets to tell you how to grieve. There's no specific way. There's no manual. There's no time frame. And those who have lost a true love know it never goes away. You just learn to live with that broken piece of you. What you need is love and support and people who care about you. So glad you kicked them out and you stay strong. Never forget the love and compassion you and your husband and your son had. That love is irreplaceable and unmatched, regardless of what others may see as hindrance or baggage. Keep them close to your heart, I can tell that they were your happiness. I lost my oldest daughter at 17. It is a pain that dulls but never truly leaves. You have my deepest sympathies. People like your brother-in-law have no compassion for anyone but themselves. Discard them. Change your locks, your phone number, and block them on everything. These are people you don't need in your life. Take the time to grieve, as long as it takes. There will be days you do not want to survive, days where breathing hurts, but it will get better. Trust me, I've been there. That you are even concerned about being an idiot shows what a wonderful person you are. He's an appalling human being and you do not need people like that in your life. I'm very sorry for your loss. For someone close to you to come up with such an awful thing takes a special kind of nasty. I do get that sometimes when faced with loss, people accidentally say things that are slightly inappropriate on the spur of the moment and we should forgive them for their awkwardness. This is not what's happening here though. 3 years ago, my husband lost his wife of 18 years. She passed from a brain tumor, only 11 months passed between her diagnosis and her death. She was only 41 years old and left behind 4 children ranging from the ages of 5-16. I have actually known my husband for about 8 years, as we worked together. I always found him to be a handsome guy, but never did I start falling for him until a year after his first wife passed. He even introduced me to their kids before we officially started dating. They all accepted me with open arms and have all been nothing short of amazing. We got married last November and welcomed our daughter in September. About a month back, we had some family photos done with all 7 of us. They finally arrived in the mail recently and I decided to start framing and hanging them throughout the house. There are 4 photos with my husband's late wife hanging around the house. 3 of them are old family photos and the other is a shot of just her. There are only so many places to hang photos in this house, so I decided to move one of the old family photos and place our newly done photo there. The old frame was a lot smaller than the new one I had put it, so I moved the old one to a more tight spot in a less visible area of the house. I soon came to the realization that this may have come off a bit tacky, so I talked to my husband and children about it upon their arrival from work or school. They all said it was no big deal and encouraged me to leave the newly framed photo in this spot, which I did. Over the weekend, her parents came over to visit with the kids. They, especially her mother, have always seemed to have a blatant disdain for me. She discouraged my husband from marrying me because I was too young to help raise 4 children. Then, she yelled at me for referring to myself as the kid's mother. Despite the tense past, I have never seen her as angry as she was about the changing of pictures. She accused me of trying to replace her daughter by giving rid of all evidence that she once lived in the house. I assured her that was not the case. She demanded that I put the original picture back in its place and find another spot to put my photo. I refused, telling her that my husband and her grandchildren had all approved of the way I did things. She then went on a long rant about how I have no respect for her or her husband. I replied by saying that this is my house and I will do things the way I want just as she can arrange the things she wants in her own house. They angrily stormed out of the house and we haven't heard from them since. Perhaps I came off a little too hard, but this woman has been making my life miserable from day one. I had simply had enough and felt that I had to put my foot down and stop letting her get away with a grieving excuse. No idiots here. But really, this woman is the grandmother of the kids you now call your kids. She is never going to be out of your life. Have some respect for the woman's grief. Your husband has a new wife, the kids have a stepmom, and you sound pretty good, but she is never going to have another daughter. As a mother, maybe you can build some empathy with her over that. How would you feel if someone removed a picture of your child to a less visible part of the house? You're the idiot. Moving a photo of your husband's late wife is a delicate task, and you are not the person to be doing it, full stop. At most, you should have had a conversation with your husband and then let him move the photo himself if he felt it was appropriate. This is the kind of thing you really shouldn't ever be dipping your hands into, even if your intentions are entirely pure. Also, the way you dismissively write "stop letting her get away with her grieving excuse" in reference to the grandmother is extraordinary idiotish. Her daughter died, you monster. That is pain I hope you never need to know. She is never going to stop grieving for her. Their 16-year-old calls you mom within 3 years of their own mom's death. And then you move her picture and replace it with yours. That, combined with a somewhat fast timeline, is a powder keg waiting to explode. Try to step more lightly. As another commenter said, he has remarried, the kids have a stepmom, but they'll never replace their daughter. Also, maybe I'm missing something, but why did you put her in quotes when referring to his late wife? That doesn't sit well with me either. I think just a lot of small things here are adding up, it's not one big thing that you did. I am stuck in a different state than my family and friends right now due to the virus, so on my birthday my boyfriend and parents were going to throw me a small party. Just me, my boyfriend and his little siblings, and his parents. A super low-key dinner. I'm vegetarian, I have been for 13 years, it's not anything new or anything that people don't know. So, when I went to their house and saw them cooking pasta with bacon pieces and cooking up veggies in the bacon grease pan, I realized there was nothing I could have except beer, and I was hungry. I reminded them I don't eat meat, and they were like, you can pick the bacon bits out, they're just sprinkled on top, and give them to boyfriend, he'll eat anything. And we made vegetables that you can eat too. I didn't want to pick meat out of the pasta or eat vegetables that were cooked in bacon fat, so I said I wasn't sure, I didn't like meat flavor at all. I might have something else. They said there was hardly any bacon grease in the pan, well they'd used it for bacon, they just didn't wash in between, but I wouldn't even taste it. Then I ordered a pizza to their house, and when it arrived his parents were mad and upset that I had. I said that I mentioned that I wasn't into eating meat so I might get my own food. My boyfriend and I left early and went out ice skating, so the day turned out fine, lol. Am I the idiot for ordering pizza? Not the idiot. As someone who has gone back and forth between strict vegetarianism for a few years and back to eating meat again, I can tell you that there's a good chance that bacon grease would have done a number on your stomach. I still don't eat a lot of meat, but I try to have it every now and then, just so I don't have to go through that terrible reintroduction process again. After 13 years, I'm guessing the bacon grease would have been really foreign to your digestive system. My girlfriend was vegetarian for just 2 years, and my parents completely revamped holiday dinners for her. Like, they spent a week planning what vegetables does she eat, what meat substitutes does she like, etc. We're from the rural United States. We like meat and lots of it. We still accommodated. Now, on your birthday, a day totally about you, they couldn't at least take the care to make sure you could eat something before planning the meal. I'm not saying they're intentionally rude, but I would definitely talk to your boyfriend about future holiday meals. Also, don't apologize for the pizza. They should have actually paid for it for you, since it was your birthday, after all. I was in Italy with friends and I went to Dario, the butcher's place in Chianti. They said they had vegetarian options, but I wasn't super convinced, so I threw some granola bars in my bag. To my surprise, I ate like a freaking king: bread and tomato stew, multiple types of potatoes, beans in a sauce I can't even describe. It was so good, bruschetta, and more. They just kept bringing me more food. If the place described as a carnivore paradise, where they literally have a guy come out every half hour with giant steaks in his hands, proclaiming the amazingness of beef, if they can be vegetarian friendly, your SO's parents can step up their game. My son Tom passed away 4 months ago, at the age of 6. He had a heart condition that robbed him of living his childhood like any other kid. He was such an angel, and he loved food so much. I tried to feed him as much as I could, because he was so thin, and didn't have enough energy to run around and play because of his condition. My husband's family were directly involved in my son's care. They were always there, but they never stayed at the hospital so I could go home and get some sleep. They stopped our kids from being around him. They did not help at all. When my son passed away, they felt free to take his belongings, clothes, toys and blankets, and my mother-in-law insisted to have a burial service, but I chose to have him cremated and kept his ashes in an urn inside my bedroom. My mother-in-law started visiting regularly. She didn't do that when he was alive, just visited the hospital, and she started talking about making ashes pendants for me, my husband and her family as a way to carry Tom's memory with us and keep him close wherever we go. She told me that my brother-in-law loved Tom so much and wanted a pendant made for him as well. I was stunned, and I didn't know what to tell her. I remember telling her that this was never gonna happen, and that all those family members have their kids with them, and that I was the one who lost a son. She started arguing, talking about how important Tom was to her and the family, and that my husband would agree with this fair treatment instead of keeping an urn in my bedroom and refusing to let the family share their grief. I told her there was no way I'd say yes. She seemed so upset and took it personally, started berating me and talking about how everyone else was trying to show support, and that was the last time we spoke. I got invited to a road trip by my family to help get me relieve so much stress, and when I returned after 6 days, I found that my son's urn was gone. My husband showed me a necklace that he said had my son's ashes in it, and pulled out another one that belonged to him that was in the shape of cross. He told me that his mom made necklaces for me, him, her, brother-in-law with our son's ashes, paid money to get it done, and so we could all have Tom with us. I was in a shock. I had to sit down for a minute. Turned out he allowed his mom to take the urn while I was gone, and his defense was that his family cared so much for Tom, and they all deserved to keep a memorial necklace as a way to remember him. I yelled at him that this was my son, not theirs. She had no right to take the urn and do what she wanted with it, especially when I told her no. I was so mad with him, I couldn't even look at him. I took my things and went back to my family and refused to take the necklace that she put thousands on. I called her and berated her for her awful behavior and told her she was selfish and inconsiderate for taking my son from me like that. My husband is trying to apologize, but I can't accept he did this and betrayed me. Not the idiot. Find out what company did this. Give them a call and ask them what they do to ensure that your mother-in-law had permission to disturb the ashes and account for everything made. Anyone reputable would have required some form of documentation from the person the parlor turned the ashes over to. Sue them for desecrating the ashes without consent. After that, press charges against your mother-in-law and husband for grave robbing. You can follow that up with suing them and brother-in-law for emotional damage as a result of said grave robbing and possession of stolen property. Make sure you get the urn and every piece that was made. Your son deserves to rest peacefully. First off, I'm so sorry for your loss. Second, your husband and his family are major idiots. I don't blame you for leaving. Honestly, I would probably leave my husband over this. What he did is irreversible. He went against your wishes and waited until you were gone to take the urn. That's unforgivable in my opinion. You're right. He was your son, not your mother-in-law's son. What the hell, they had absolutely no right to do that. Your husband 100% should have discussed it with you. I felt very violated just reading about it. I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry they have taken your son from you again. Your mother-in-law sounds like a narcissistic piece of work. You definitely need to stand your ground because she crossed a boundary you just don't cross. I was dining at an upscale restaurant and the bill came out to $49.82. I pulled out a $50 to pay and told the waitress I didn't need change. Goes without saying, but I was planning on leaving the rest of her tip on the table. I used to work as a server. I always tip generously. The waitress misunderstood my intentions and said really? Loud enough for all the other diners to hear. Before I could say anything, she said something like wow, thanks for the generous tip, snatched the payment from the table, and walked away in a huff. All the diners around me were staring daggers at me. It was humiliating. I flagged down the manager and let him know what happened. He knows me and knows I'd never stiff servers. He offered to comp the meal, but I said it wasn't necessary. I just wanted to let him know what happened and would be on my way. The manager insisted that I was owed an apology. Made sense to me at the time. She apologizes, gets her tip, I leave, everyone is happy. When the manager called the waitress over, both of us saw her roll her eyes as she was walking here. As soon as the manager saw this, he put on his "you're about to get fired" face. All the tears and pleading made no difference. It was ugly. People were filming with their cell phones. As she was being escorted to the back by some kitchen workers, who probably think I'm the second coming of Satan. The manager insisted on comping our meal and we went on our way. When we got home, the wife claimed I was an idiot for making a huge scene out of nothing and getting that poor girl fired over a simple misunderstanding. I feel like all I did was share a legitimate complaint to the manager. She is the one who escalated it by rolling her eyes at us. Am I being unreasonable? What would you have done in this situation? Everyone's the idiot here. If you were going to leave the tip on the table, then you should have handed it to her with a $50 and then said, "No change please." The way you worded it made it 100% sound like you were only tipping her 18 cents, which is more disrespectful than just handing her $50 and saying nothing. She shouldn't have acted out, but I understand how she must have felt at that moment. Who knows how her day had been going up to that point, but that doesn't excuse rude behavior to customers. You're the idiot. Full disclosure. Me 20 plus years in hospitality. I call bullcrap on aspects of your story. And as a former hospitality worker, stories like yours boil my blood. As a former server, you know that keep the change meant she for sure thought she was getting 18 cents for all of her work. Why didn't you just put her tip in the folder along with your $50 like normal people? Then, you called her out to her manager on the floor. That said, I would have probably fired her, too, because while it's shame to get stiffed, she should have remained professional, but you definitely instigated the whole scene in a big idiot way. Everyone's the idiot here. You did make a scene out of a minor embarrassment. The manager fired her for a misunderstanding. It seems like there were some other problems, or if this had happened multiple times, we don't really know. Either way, handling it in public really makes him an idiot. The waitress loudly commented on how much you left as a tip. I'll never understand why customers are expected to tip X amount in some countries. Isn't it the employer's responsibility to make sure his employees are getting paid the minimum wage?